Executive functions help children develop skills of teamwork, leadership, decision-making, critical thinking, and being aware of our own emotions, their own emotions, as well as those of others, amongst many other skills. Why is enhancing executive functioning skills so crucial within the classroom?
Well, I think you just said why it's so crucial. You think, and this is part of the same story I just told you, students who just want to learn right answers because they can put it on their test paper and be guaranteed a good slot in the best college that they want to go to. I don't want to work with anybody else, for heaven's sakes. That's just distracting. I can do it faster by myself. I don't want those people in my group. We might not get a high score if I have those people in my group. They're not good. They don't belong here. And yet we need a world where we all see one another. I mean, you know, the easy argument is to say when we get out in the world, we'll be in jobs where we have to work in teams or offices where we have to solve problems together, or operating rooms, surgical rooms where a team has to work together to keep a patient's life intact. But the truth is, we need a society where we all see one another and where we can look and say, we have whole segments of people who are not being served well here. And all of us need to work together rather than me. If it's working for me, then I'm fine. So I think the world turns on what you're talking about. And if we don't have that self-knowledge, if we don't understand how to listen to other people, if we don't understand how to say in an approachable way, I think I hear what you're saying. I'm wondering also if we could think about X instead of saying that's stupid, because it's not how I'm thinking. The whole world needs that. Again, we have cognitive capacity, affective capacity, social capacity, physical capacity, and schools ought to develop all four of those. And if we don't, we have less than whole people. And if all we're developing is the cognitive piece, and all of that's about right answers, we're not doing that well, then we don't have kids learning, not trying to figure it out on their own. We teach them how to work together effectively. And if they can't feel part of a peer group, then affectively they have problems as well. So we're crippling kids in multiple areas if we don't see the interaction of those. People will say we don't have time to have social or emotional experiences for kids. If we don't have that time, then we don't have time for the kids, because they need all of that to be whole. It's bottom line on that. That's who they are. They're all those pieces. And all those pieces, they're not separate from each other. It's not like I have to have an extra 20 minutes a week to do social and emotional learning. It's I have to help kids learn together and help them develop those skills in order to learn this content, and it all converges.
Exactly. I agree with you on that. Students who find cognitive tasks interesting and satisfying at an early age are more likely to persist in seeking cognitive stimulation as they develop. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think that's true with anything else. A little kid who learns how to kick a ball really well, and everybody says, look how far he kicked that ball, is much more likely to keep trying to kick that ball than the kid who misses it every time he tries to hit it and people are over there laughing at him. I think when we have kids who are cognitively more mature or more well-developed at a given age, that doesn't mean in another year other people won't catch up with them, and in 2 more years a lot of people won't pass them, but at that moment that feels really satisfying, and so of course they want to do it. Not only does it feel right to them like kicking the ball, but they see all these adult people in their lives going, woo-wee, that's amazing. So again, the trick in a classroom is to have that cognitive opportunity that is a fit for all kinds of kids. And the thing is not to do the cognitive task and to say, okay, well, we did that and she got the right answer, but to be able to say, well, so what'd you learn? What's clearer to you today than it was yesterday? How are you better today than you were yesterday? What's the way that you tried tackling this today that's new for you that makes you better? So there are lots of things that can be satisfying from that cognitive work other than you're the one who made the A, let's move on.
So locally, we introduced the emergent curriculum in the early years, which is a philosophy of teaching and a way of planning a children's curriculum that focuses on being responsive to their interests. How important is it to base teaching and learning on the child's interests in order to create a brain-friendly classroom, if at all? And how important are students' interests in the differentiated classroom?
Well, answer the second part first, because it's easier. In differentiation, we talk about 3 strands of research that address student variance. And the 3 are sort of covers for some other things, but we know that kids differ in readiness levels. That's not to say ability. Ability is really irrelevant when you're teaching. Ability is something that we perceive to be fixed, but readiness just means this is where she is today. So I can do something to move her on, so she's a different point of readiness tomorrow. But that entry point thing, we have huge research support for from many disciplines and many content areas. And that, we see that as teachers really readily. I have kids in here that don't know to read from left to right yet, assuming you're in a left to right country. And other kids who are reading chapter books. What am I supposed to do? And that's a statement about readiness. But give it a little while and all those other kids will probably catch up and read the chapter books too. Don't sell them out, just let's help them move forward. We also have, and by the way, the research from a variety of fields on readiness or point of entry differences is that if we don't attend to those, kids really can't learn. If work is consistently too hard for them or consistently too easy for them, they're not learning. That's powerful. If we're not doing that, they're not learning. The interest thing is a little bit different. Kids' interests differ. And with the interest piece, it's not so much that they can't learn if we don't do that. It's that they're not as motivated to learn. So if you show me what I can learn through something I'm really interested in, my motivation to learn goes up. And then so does the potential for learning as we go. So readiness is about learning, progressing. Interest is about motivation. And the third area that we see differences in is what we once might have called learning style. Over the years, that term has morphed in many ways and because of continuing research. But what I talk about now with that is what I call learning preferences. And what I mean by that is we all can learn anything in a whole bunch of different ways. And what we need to be doing for kids is saying, let's see how many ways you can solve this problem. Let me ask somebody, how did you go about figuring out this thing last night? Okay, who figured it out a different way? Well, who else figured it out a third way? Nobody? Okay, turn to somebody else and figure out a third way to do that right now. And by the way, you can express yourself in a sentence or a paragraph or an essay, but you can also do it in a storyboard or a brief video or in a demonstration or in a model or in virtual reality pretty soon. What's a way you'd like to do this, to express yourself? And if you're trying to learn in one way and you're finding out that's not working, okay, that's fine. You just realize it wasn't working. That's really important. So now what's another way you could do this? What's another way you could approach it? How do you know if something's working? And if it's not, what alternatives do you have? So what that's saying is open up the learning process for many modes of taking in and expressing learning. Not to say you're a kind of learner or one's better than the other, but I want to make room for everybody here. And that learning preference thing isn't so much about the necessity in order to learn or motivation, it's about efficiency. So if I were a child who was blind and you kept telling me I could only pass the course if I read from a chapter book in print for you, that would be pretty inefficient. And none of us would be that thoughtless. But we do that to kids with learning disabilities. We do that to kids who have blocks with writing or who are so stressed by many things in the world that they simply cannot think about the possibility of this constrained assignment. But if they could do it in a different mode, they might be invited in. So that's sort of the thinking with that. And I think, again, and by the way, learning preferences and interest both have a lot of overlap with culture. Kids from some cultures may have very different interests that they want to explore, but they're not homogeneous groups either. There's a lot of range there, but there's some commonalities because of cultural experiences. and some differences. Kids from different cultures may very well need to work in some different ways. In my country, we value too much independence as a learner. It's about you, what this does for you, what your test score is, forget the rest of them. If you can do it, that's fine. But there are cultures where we value the group more than we value the individual. There are kids who learn much better in a group because they really need to hear other people's ideas. Kids who just need to talk during the day to do it. So one culture doesn't predict one thing, but there might be more of a cultural draw and interest in learning preferences than, if kids are all homogeneous in a culture who also aren't the same. So those three areas, readiness, interest, and learning preference, consume some other things like gender, for example. There's still some gender differences in how we approach learning. And so those things enable progress, they enable motivation, and they are catalysts for successful expression of learning, successfully showing what you know. So I think the idea of doing that in the early childhood years is really important. And if we think it's okay to stop that at the end of the early childhood years, we've just made a big mistake, because we've had teachers who've helped kids become interested and figure out ways to nurture those interests and get really excited about learning. And then if we're going to sit down and say all of you learn the same stuff in the same way with the same expression over the same time period, we've sort of thrown cold water on those other guys over there, but we've also done the same for students. So a kid says, I really want to know about this. I had a kid say to me one time, he asked me if he could study theories of extinction of the dinosaurs. He was in the 9th grade. And I gave him the most amazing, stupid teacher answer. It wasn't an answer, it was a question. I said, why are you asking me that, Jeff? I'm your English teacher. Stupid question, as though curiosity doesn't belong in an English class. That one only should belong in a science class. I mean, what does that mean? But anyhow, he said to me, Ms. T, I stay awake at night thinking about questions related to that, and I can hardly breathe because I want to know stuff so much about it. But I've been looking, and I think I'm going to have to be at least a junior in college before there's any time in school for me to answer those questions. I just don't think I can wait that long. And so I said, so what do you have in mind, Jeff? And it was a terrible answer. It's not an answer any teacher ever wants to hear. But it was exactly the right answer, and I learned from it. He said, well, here's my idea. I'll come to you on Monday. And on Monday morning, you can tell me which days are important for me to be in class. And of course, my teacher brain thing says, what do you mean which days are important? All 5 days are important. I'm planning important stuff for 5 days. But I let him finish his sentence, and he said, in the days that aren't so important for me to be in class, then I'll bring my research materials and go to the library, and I'll keep working with this stuff. And so I let him decide which days were important, and he was generous about that. He chose some to be important. And he spent much of the rest of that year studying that, conducting that study, and created a piece of work that his science teachers couldn't understand. The science coordinator for the district couldn't understand it. Faculty members at the University of Virginia helped him, and he got beyond them, and he reported his work to our class at the end of the year. And for all of us in there, it was as close to a holy experience as you'll ever have in a classroom. What we saw was a kid with transcendent knowledge and passion about something, and how that person had invested time and energy in finding out things that the rest of us could not even understand, but knew to be true because of what he was doing. And that's an extreme example. But why would we not think that we can teach skills of writing by letting kids explore their own interests, or skills of research, or aspects of science, or theory of music, or anything else? So those things, the readiness, interest, learning preference, need to be on our radar for sure in the early childhood years and all the way through the university.
I agree that this emergent curriculum should keep on going, not stop at early years and then start curriculum, content should keep on going on, still higher education. That's what I believe.
And there's no contradiction, there's no duality between content and interest and imagination. And you can teach content in really boring, pedestrian, useless feeling kind of ways, or in ways that make the kid's head go, yeah, I never thought about that, and want to keep going all the time. Those should not be contradictory. The very best university professors understand the role, the dual role of those two things, and teach with both of them in mind. The best professors at the best universities understand and do that.
Oh, to our last question now. What one piece of advice would you choose to give to the teachers and parents viewing this vlog?
Honor the human beings. Do what needs to be done to dignify them, to help them go away every day feeling better about themselves and about learning and about you as a teacher. It's not a popularity contest, but a person who supports them and not only dignifies them, but dignifies the others. Be a student of your students, own them. And one writer that I really like very much in this country, Geneva Gay, who writes about culturally responsive teaching, says, and so this is my answer to you, she says, most teachers care about their kids. We like being with them. We laugh at their crazy jokes. We wonder what they've been doing when they were gone for the summer. We think about them in spare minutes here and there. We care about them. We're glad they're in our lives. And I read that and I thought, yeah, I think I do that. And I think many of the teachers I worked with did. I can think of a few that I'm not so sure about, but I think most of the teachers that I taught with in public school and in the university care about the students, not just about content. So I was feeling pretty good. And she says, but that's not the measure of excellent teaching. The second question is not, do you care about your students, but do you care for them? And she says, caring about them is liking them, wanting to be with them, thinking they're kind of fun. Caring for them is accepting the responsibility of doing whatever's necessary to help them grow and succeed. It's a whole different measure. And most of us as adults and those who are parents understand the difference between parents who care about their kids but don't care for them. And there's some kids who have parents that don't do either. But they're parents who care about their kids but don't do whatever's necessary to ensure that they continue to develop. In the classroom, it's easy for us to say, I can't do that. I have too many kids. I can't care for them. That means I'd be interrupting my time at home, worried about them. Figure out how to do more than one thing at a time. Care for them as much as you can. That will lead you to almost everything else.
In fact, I came across a quote once and it struck me. And it goes, don't be the best educator in the world, but be the best educator for the world.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it struck me and it remained.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Tomlinson. It was an honor to have you as my guest speaker. I really enjoyed listening to you. And I thank you so much for being here.
It's been my pleasure. And I hope what we've done today is useful for some of your audience.
Yes, definitely.